Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Works meeting of the Kent City Council for Monday, November 1st. The year is speeding by. I'm Brenda Fincher, chair of the committee. To my left, I have Councilmember Marley Larimer, and to my right, Councilmember Seth Winder-Core. We're also joined by Department Director Chad Barron, and keeping our notes, keeping everything in order today, we have Nancy Yoshitaki. So welcome to all of you watching, and we are going to get started. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Do have a minor change. We list informational items as number 7. That should be number 6, and adjournment should be 7. And then under informational items, we'll have a report on last week's storm.
Thank you very much. So with that taken, we are ready for a motion.
Chair, I move to approve the minutes from October 18th.
It has been moved, wait a minute.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from October 18th. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. The minutes from October 18th are approved. We are moving on to business. Our first up, we have our snow and ice report. We have Brent Collins and Bill Thomas.
Yes, thank you, committee chair and committee people here. I'm Bill Thomas. I'm the streets and vegetation manager. And over here is Brent Collins. He's the supervisor of streets. And we're here to give you a insight on how we prepare for our winter weather. There we go, it works. We prepare for our winter weather response starting in early fall, preferably late summer. And each fall, we coordinate with our adjoining jurisdictions to make sure that we identify any lifeline routes, any new roads that are open, anything like that, so we can make sure that all of our lifeline routes are covered for freight, mobility, transit, emergency vehicles, and things like that. So we're committed to providing quality service to the residents of Kent during a snow and ice event. The safety of the motoring public is our primary concern. Our number one goal is to keep traffic moving through the city in the most safe and efficient manner possible. So annually we attend a winter weather meeting hosted by the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, more commonly known as NOAA. Okay, this information is gained from this meeting, gives us a better understanding of what's coming up this coming winter season. During the season, NOAA hosts weather-related webinars when they know events are coming. Okay, so when one is coming about a week out, we know about it's getting really good. We'll be able to predict it a week out in advance. So they're given daily webinars on what the severity is, the probability is, where it's going to hit, where it's not going to hit. So with that, we're able to, along with our own weather forecast, we're able to decide how much response is going to be needed for what's coming. So, part of our material stockpile sites, we have 3 sites. We have one up on the Kent East Hill Operations Center. And just to give you an idea, we have 2,000 tons of sand up there. And we have 200 tons of salt. Okay, and on the West Hill, we have another 1,000 tons of sand and 200 tons of salt up there. And our Valley Shops area has just a couple hundred tons of sand, or 40 tons of sand, and 14,000 gallons of de-icing stuff for our tanks here. And we have about 450 50-pound bags of salt. And what we use those for is the downtown areas, and we do the curb ramps and the crosswalks and things like that. So that's one of the advantages of having those bags on hand. The bigger trucks coming down here can pose to be a problem. So it became very apparent that during this last storm we had in February, that 200 tons of salt does not go very far or very long, okay? So we literally had to transfer material from the West Hill to the East Hill, because the East Hill is really quite large. So what we've gained approval to add 2 additional storage units. I'll show you right here. So 2 additional storage units so we can actually triple the capacity of our salt storage for longer events. If it should go a week or more, we have plenty of material on hand. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Brent, my supervisor here, and when he's done, then I'll finish up. Okay?
Thanks, Bill. Good afternoon, committee members. A little background about myself. Like Bill said, my name is Brent Collins. I'm a street supervisor for the city of Kent. I've been a supervisor for the city now for about 16 years, and during that time, I've also been one of the shift DLC managers when it comes to our snow and ice control. So I got a little bit of background when it comes to this. But as far as preparing our equipment, I usually begin at mid-September of each year. There's quite a bit that goes, there's quite a bit of involvement. We've got, with 16 trucks now, and each of them got plows and sanders and de-icers, and everything has to be gone through. AVL systems, everything you can think of. We bring them all down starting in mid-September, and then fleet mechanics test all the equipment before being deployed for each event. They come across any problems with the trucks or other equipment to keep, they get them fixed. So hopefully we have very little issues when it comes time to use them. So after each event, they check the equipment and order any parts if needed to be ready for the next event should the need arise. And if it's a longer event, it's nice to have these guys because they're actually on shift 24 hours with us. Anything happens during that time, then they're able to fix as we go. Here you see, these are our chemical storage tanks located at the operations shop. We have up to a 14,000 gallon capacity in our storage tanks. That translates to about 14 loads of material. Once we get down to about 50% capacity, it's usually when I order. They come out of Tri-Cities where we order our chemical from, and usually takes about 2 to 3 days depending on the passes, pretty much. I'm going to get into a little bit more about our chemical usage here in the next couple slides, so hang tight. So what we do to prepare for a weather event, we load all sanders and plows a day or two before the event arrives. That's where our subscription to the WeatherNet helps because we can see what's coming. And if we have an event that's imminent, it gives us plenty of time to load up all the trucks and chain them up and get them ready. We deploy and stage signs and message boards at their usual locations. And we equip all trucks with chains and install when snow accumulations are imminent. I'll be breaking down all of this down in the next few slides. So our anti-icing efforts begin when frost is forecasted for our morning commute. Our trucks begin to spray the road surfaces the night before, very early in the morning when temperatures are at or below 40 degrees and falling. Here you see these are bridges and road locations that we typically pre-apply our anti-ice to prevent black ice. The bridges are in red. Speaking of using chemical, we use what's called calcium chloride. And I got an email this morning forwarded to me, and Brenda had a question, so I'm hoping I'm going to answer this for her. She was really curious about her de-icer solution. The only thing she could remember was, it had maple syrup in it. Well, I'll kind of get to that, but she was really curious on a serious note about how environmentally friendly and, does it negatively impact the Puget Sound. Well, I came up with a few things this morning, and I hope it can answer some of your questions. So why anti-ice with liquids? The big reason is to save money and time while protecting the environment. Anti-icing using liquid chemical, it's a proactive method of snow and ice control. That's why we use it. So both liquid and granular products have benefits that, when applied correctly, will maximize our road service levels to keep people safe while minimizing road costs and cost the environment. For a liquid anti-icing program, a few benefits that are included are less chemicals required with anti-icing to prevent ice bonding than trying to remove ice after it's bonded to the pavement. So the rule of thumb for us is that removing ice or snowpack after it forms takes 10 times more energy than preventing the formation itself. Liquid chemicals have proven very effective at preventing bridge deck and pavement frost. And anti-icing applications last for several days. So I could have the crew go out and spray our roads and bridges. If it's really nice out, it'll last up to 7 to 10 days before we have to reapply it again. Better pavement conditions, improved friction can be achieved, reducing number of crashes, and can be applied at lower rates than solids and adhere to better pavement. Better to the pavement. So speaking of adhering better, this is where that boost comes in. That maple syrup you're talking about, it's actually a thicker molasses. And what it is, it helps adhere the material to the bridge deck or the asphalt. That way it's not getting thrown around, it sticks, and people aren't carrying it around everywhere. And also it's got the boost has a rust inhibitor in it. It's built in, so it really helps in preventing rust to the vehicles and to your structures as well. Let's see, a couple items of interest is, so application rates, we put this stuff down at about 15 to 25 gallons per lane mile. Well, this is equivalent to 50 to 100 pounds per lane mile of a dry chemical. So if we just use sand and not chemical, you're putting out 3 times as much. It's not even going to stay on the ground. There have been studies conducted regarding calcium chloride on the roadside environment. It's found that the chemical does not significantly harm aquatic or plant life. And liquid anti-icers have less negative impacts on highway bridge decks, trees, and vegetation, and water supply than any other method of winter road treatment. It's the top of the line. So basically, everything that goes on the road ends up in the environment. We all know that. There's accidents. You don't want accidents because, there's a ton of compact ice. Because what happens in an accident, fluids come out of the cars. You get oils, you get radiator fluid, all that stuff is all going up in a drain, one way or the other. So it's important for us to be careful of what and how much material we use, whether it's liquid or traditional salt and sand. And what's nice about our trucks is we can determine how much material we want to put out or we don't want to put out. And I feel by anti-icing properly, we end up using fewer chemicals and less abrasive materials. And this makes anti-icing an environmentally sound choice. Although both liquid and granular products have their benefits, when both are applied correctly, this maximizes service levels to keep people safe while minimizing environmental impacts. So I hope that answered a few of your questions you had about it. So now the snow is here. It's basically almost here. So it's easier to install the chains before the trucks leave the yard. That's what you see Gerald doing there. And we perform walk-arounds on each piece of equipment, and I have tailgate meetings to go over our assignments. Here, communications is very, very important. What you're seeing here is a couple different pictures of our DOC setup. It's not just critical within our department, but it's also critical information out to the public. So the photo above on top there shows our DOC at the shops. With the current COVID protocols in place, we have set up an alternate site in our training room, which is the lower one. This setup will allow for up to 6 personnel to run the activities of our emergency operations. Road status updates are posted to the Kent website, drivekent.com. Other media we use is Facebook and Twitter. Another form of communication is our variable message boards, which are strategically placed in advance of storms, notifying motorists which roads to avoid. These are mainly for our hillside roads. These locations, some of them are Military Veterans Drive on the West Hill, James Street, 104th, 256, 104th, for example. When it comes to street closures, whenever the possibility of snow or ice in the forecast, the special emphasis crew verifies that the barricades are in place at their locations close to the streets that may be closed. Even though it's not a very popular decision for most people that we close a road down, but for me personally as a DOC manager, I tend to lean on the side of safety over popularity. If we decide to close a road down, it's always prevent anyone from possibly getting hurt. So I know some people aren't too happy with me sometimes when I do it early. This doesn't look that bad, but I know what's coming. And I just want people to understand we got a bunch of trucks now, we got a bunch of equipment, but sometimes you can actually get a storm you can have everything in the world, but you're still going to have the possibility of closing roads down. It's just going to happen. So we're going to do our best to prevent a lot of that. What you're seeing there is some of the roads I was telling you about that actually get closed down if need be. Kent Street Department or Kent Police Department may make decision to close each of these streets, and at times, Kent Police Department may place out the barricades. When Kent Police Department officers request to close a street, they'll notify the DOC of the location, and in turn, our team will deploy the signs. This information is tracked, and Kent Public Works will provide this information through the communication network. So we're always updating these. If any of these get closed down, I don't care if it's one of them or if it's all of them, we're always keeping our road closures updated so I can get out to out through social media, out through the radio, however we need it. We'll get out to the public as fast as we can. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, Kent Police play a very important part of our success with snow fighting, and they have for years. I've been, like I said, around a long time, and I was driving trucks at one point a long time, and Kent PD is a lot of help. You know, they work quickly to have abandoned vehicles removed as needed to make it safe for us and the motoring public. And then we've also added a new section of 224th and 88th Avenue and 218th corridor to our emphasis list. Still pretty steep and usually one of the first to close, but like I said, we're going to do our best to keep as many open as we can. Real quickly, now the event is here, let's talk about our priority routes. These here, our first priority will be the major connections on both East and West Hills. We concentrate in the East and West corridors to keep traffic moving through the valley and up the hills. Along the West Hill, we concentrate on Military Road, Reith Road, and Pacific Highway as shown on this slide. All secondary roads are attended to only after the primary roads are under control. This could take up 4 to 6 hours after the snowfall. It depends how bad the event is. With the additional salt and equipment, we will be able to treat these secondary roads much faster, I anticipate. Even with the additional equipment resources we have now, like I mentioned before, there may be a good chance that we still close roads such as James Street or 218th due to the steepness of grade. It all depends on the severity of the storm. Now, this doesn't mean that I think what's nice about this, though, is even though we close it, I don't see them being as closed for as long as they used to be. They just may be real quick, and then we can get them open, and we'll be all right. But sometimes we may just have to shut them down real quick. Our third priority roads will be residential collectors and industrial roads. These really could take up to a day or two after an event to clear these roads. And here's our residential challenges. I'm sure many of you have heard this. And a lot of questions I get, even from family members and friends, is why don't they ever see us in the neighborhood? Well, this is why. You see this is without snow. This is a perfect summer day. We took this picture with, imagine windrows and imagine it being night and everybody else is from the hills parked along the street and they're all parked sideways, and it gets pretty crazy for the drivers down there. It's too easy to have an accident and hit another vehicle down when you're down inside these residential roads. So they will not be cleared unless we're assisting police or fire if it's an emergency. The photo, like I said, this photo will give you a good picture as to why this is problematic. And due to safety and resources, we'll not clear residential roads. These roads are narrow with parking on both sides. Plowing will only cause windrows blocking vehicles and driveways with a high probability of damaging vehicles. Residential collectors are wider, usually limits parking ability of neighboring residents. That's why that was part of 3. Priority 3 is I like to send my guys in there when we can and clear out those neighborhood collectors, and those basically in a nutshell are any major road that connects this neighborhood road is what it would be. So they come out and they connect to a major road that brings those, that's what we would clean up. And with that, Bill's going to talk a little bit more about the AVL and so on. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. This is now mine. Okay, well, let's just go with this. So, as you can see here, this is our AVL system. We have 16 trucks, and we have 16 AVL units in these trucks. And it's able to track these vehicles, and for, just real time, as well as historical data that helps us out. So with the number of vehicles we have had in the winters in last February, you can see we attended to all the priority routes. This is that one weekend period here. We attended all the priority routes within the first 48 hours. So we kept the roads open longer, and we opened the roads a lot more quickly. So as I said before, I said we had 16 trucks. We have the capability to designate these trucks to concentrate on the hill routes and maintain a presence in the valley, and hopefully move out into the priority 2 and 3s as quickly as possible. So we also have the capability to move these trucks to areas depending on where the need is. Kent has microclimates, if you will. We have the West Hill, we have the valley, and we have the north and south Kent East Hill. Each one of these areas have their own little climates. It might be snowing up in the Panther Lake area, and on the West Hill there's nothing, and it could be vice versa. So we need to be able to be very flexible in where we put our equipment. And one way is by the radios that we use. They're able to dictate what's going on out in the real time, and we can see where our people are, and we know who can go to where quickly. So, yeah, I'm really lost here. Here we go. So over the past couple of years, we have added 8 additional trucks to our inventory. In the 2 upper pictures, you can see our older trucks. Those are still in commission here. We're still using them. In the lower trucks, we got a new 7-yard truck, and we've got a new 12-yard truck. And all of these trucks have seen action, and they all perform marvelously. So we have the capability, okay, we already read that. Anyway, so moving on. As we all know, snow is not the only winter weather we have, okay? We have a lot of rain and wind events. So we just had one of those events, and my colleague here is going to be talking about that later tonight. So these are what we really gear up for. So I just wanted to let you know that most of our weather events are heavy rain and wind events. Crews are available 24 hours a day to respond to all types of weather events. Okay? So we have high wind. So when we're alerted of severe weather, we plan accordingly for the severity of the storm predicted. Okay, depending on the storm, standby personnel from various sections, whether it's utilities or street or whatever, we're able to gather the people needed for that snow or storm. As with any type of storm, there's an aftermath to be dealt with. Okay, potholes, sand, branches, and other debris litter our streets and clog our drains as well. So cleanup efforts may continue for weeks, and in rare cases, they can continue for months. Cleanup, okay, sweeping up excess sand begins right after the snow is melted, and the sweepers are able to get in to get that sand up and out to keep most of it out of the drains in our storm lines. So focus of the sand cleanup are on the hills and on the intersections where we spend a lot of our time trying to keep those things up and running. So again, here's your PSA, public service announcement here. Be prepared. Today's technology, we know it's coming. We know the snow is going to come, or the high probability of a snow or wind or rain. Be prepared at home. Be prepared for your car and work as well. Because if it's coming at night and you're going to go to work, make sure your car's going to be able to get home at night. So, and if not, stay somewhere else and make arrangements for that. So after the math now, when the snowstorm's over and you've been driving around it, make sure you wash your cars off really well. Top and bottom, underneath. Okay, especially the older vehicles that have the lesser grade of undercoating or metal on the fenders and stuff like that. You want to make sure you wash those off really well. Some additional resources we have is Kent Public Works. You can call that number at 253-856-5600 during the daytime. You can call Kent Emergency Management. It's PugetSoundFire.org. Puget Sound Energy is 188-225-2121. KentWA.gov winter /winter for frequently asked questions. That should answer a lot of your questions that you have. King County Metros, of course, is kingcounty.gov. And Valleycom 911, or our non-emergency line, 253-852-2121. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions. Brent will be happy to answer any questions.
I was going to say a number that you guys had mentioned earlier, drivekent.com. That's another good one, another good resource for people to remember.
Very good.
Council members, any questions or comments?
No questions. Great presentation.
Thank you.
I loved it. I always love knowing how prepared we are going into the season, so great job to you guys.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi. How is
So-
everyone tonight?
I'm good. April, one question first. You're going to go, before we get the report on the recent incidents, we're going to do that one at the end? Okay.
Did I jump?
Okay, so we have April Delchamps here giving us some grant opportunity information.
I am. So thank you for having me here tonight. I'm going to be presenting on the last two opportunities for 2021. The first one is a Puget Sound Regional Council opportunity, or PSRC, and that's their Transportation Alternative Program, otherwise known as TAP. And the second is from the Transportation Improvement Board, and it is a Complete Streets program. Both of these are a little bit unique. Usually when I talk about grants, we talk about cycles. It's on an even or an odd year. For the Puget Sound Regional Council, it's actually usually every third or fourth year. They've not really gotten into a good swing on how often we're going to hold it. And then for the Transportation Improvement Board, what makes that one unique is that it is not actually a competition based on projects. It's a competition that looks at what we're doing as an agency for Complete Streets. So first up is the Transportation Alternatives Program. So this is federal funding, and the big thing on this one is a regional competition. So local entities, so counties, ports, tribes, and cities from King, Snohomish, Pierce, and Kitsap County are all eligible to compete for this funding. The other thing that's quite unique about this program is it's a little bit more wide-arching. Usually when we talk about transportation projects, we're talking about very specific things related to bicycle or pedestrian or roadway infrastructure. There's actually 3 different types of projects that are eligible for TAP. One of them is bicycle and pedestrian facilities. The second one is historic preservation of transportation assets. That's things like train station refurbishments and things like that. And then environmental mitigation. So a key foundation for Puget Sound Regional Council is the idea of planning and your planning effort. As we talk about federal grant competitions, there's a need for the project to be identified in your comprehensive plan, specifically your transportation element. A lot of words on this, so I apologize, but I'll walk you through it. So projects are scored in 2 sections, and the unique thing about this is the first 40 points. That first section, those are less about the project and more about the things we're doing in general for our project areas, as well as project readiness. That first one, support for centers. The big thing to know about this is to be competitive for this criteria, those 30 points. Projects must be within or on a corridor that serves a regional, countywide, or local center. Each of these centers are identified usually in a planning effort, and usually that equates to a sub-area plan. So like Midway sub-area plan, downtown sub-area plan, and such. The second part of this one is project readiness or financial plan. This is how we're planning on funding this project in totality. So not just the grant application that we're going for funding, but also our local funding and things like that. That second section of it is the project specific. That is 60 points, so 60%. Depending on which category a project falls in, whether it's a bicycle pedestrian, historic resources, or environmental, it's scored within each individual category for 60 points. Some details on this competition. There's $13.5 million available. This is available in 2022, 2023, or 2024. This equals to about $4.5 million for each year. One note is that the funding project request limits, so we can't request more than $2.5 million for a specific project, and we're only allowed to submit 2 applications. There is a lot of process with this one. So as we're looking at the timeline, it's quite long. The call for project has not been out very long, about 2 weeks, and the projects are due on December 3rd. But after that, before we can spend the money, if we're awarded those fundings, they're not available till mid-April. And that's because it has to go through a competitive process where we're scored against every other application that is submitted in order to know whether we're awarded funding. And then it goes through the PSRC process. So it goes to the Transportation Policy Board and the Executive Committee to then approve it. And it also has a public comment period that is associated with it. We're considering a couple projects for this. So there's 7 total projects on this list. These projects include multimodal facilities on multiple places on Meeker Street, new and improved pedestrian crossings, as well as identified sidewalk gaps on 240th and Russell Road. And I guess I will go backwards and make sure there's no questions on that one. All right, I'm going to jump into Complete Streets then. So the Complete Streets program is very different. Usually when we're talking about grant opportunities, we're talking about a specific project and whether it fits a criteria. That's not how this one works. It's looking at, and it's open to all municipalities, cities that have a complete street ordinance. And what TIB is looking for, the Transportation Improvement Board, is how we're doing to move the needle on complete streets. They look at the policies, the projects we're doing, how we're incorporating, and things like that. An additional layer of this is that we don't actually apply to the Transportation Improvement Board. There's 8 nominating agencies that we must submit to. And a couple of details on this award, there's about $14.67 million available. This is statewide, so it's quite a bit of competition for this one. And the awards can be somewhere between $100,000 and $1 million. And one note on this one, this is one example of what a complete street could be, which is typically called a road diet. There are many different examples of what a complete street means in different contexts, whether that's land use in urban areas or more suburban areas or more kind of spot location type of improvements. To give you a sense of kind of the process here, there's 8 nominating agencies. Almost all of them accept an application. These are 8, some of them don't though, but the ones that do, there are 8 unique applications that staff must ensemble answers to and then submit on their timeline. And one note on this is we've been developing these applications for the past 2 months, and we'll be submitting the last one today. As we look forward, early December is when we'll be notified if we are being considered for funding. And if this wasn't unique enough, this one's also different in that they don't tell us a dollar amount that we can then come up with a project. They give us 3 different options. In the past, Kent has been asked to look at projects and figure out something for $200,000, $250,000, and $300,000. Those then go back to the Transportation Improvement Board, and they decide on which project funding level they're going to then award those funds. We should hear about that in early December. And I had mentioned earlier that the funding levels available are usually between $100,000 and $1 million. I'm going to caveat that with they've actually never awarded anything over $700,000, and a vast majority of the awards are very much less than $500,000. To give kind of a sense, in 2017 competition, the average award was about $269,000, and in 2019, the average award was $347,000. We should hear about whether we're going to be competing and coming up with projects for those levels in early December, and depending on what those levels are, we're going to look towards our Transportation Master Plan as well as our Transportation Improvement Program to identify a project that will really compete well on those different levels. And I'm happy to take questions.
Questions from either of my colleagues?
So just to clarify, so we think in early December we'll have an idea if we've been awarded this one. And with the other one, it's due in December. When do we know if we'll be awarded on the previous?
We will not have a sense if we're awarded until February.
February, okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kaur? Thank you very much, April.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next, we have Dave Brock, who's going to give us a fleet report.
Thank you, Councilmember Fincher. Dave Brock, Deputy Public Works Director, responsible for the Operations and Maintenance Division. Through the budget adjustment process, some questions came up back in late September regarding an adjustment pertaining to the fleet, specifically $2.25 million to replace some fleet vehicles. And there was some questions that came up that really spoke to legislation, which may be in place that it really impacts, if you will, the city's choice of vehicles. And there is legislation that came in place. It actually came in about 2007. The legislature adopted the Revised Code of Washington 43, and it provided guidance for converting fleets or vehicles and fleets to electric and biofuels. And they really tried to emphasize the practicality of that rule and really deferred to the Department of Commerce to help define what is practical. A couple notes of point here. Initially, when it was adopted, there was a goal of having it done by 2015. Then with the Great Recession that happened, it was actually moved out to 2018. They also spoke to some of the elements of it. There was no provision or a rule, if you will, to replace vehicles before their life cycle replacement. No real infrastructure overhaul requirements, more just life cycle ways of phasing this in. So the Department of Commerce, they adopted Washington Administrative Code 194, and they defined practicality involving several dynamic factors, including the costs, availability, changes to the infrastructure, O&M, technical feasibility, and just overall implementation. They went on to provide a little more clarity on practicality in terms of it's practical to purchase an electric or hybrid vehicle when a vehicle is available that meets the operational needs. Charging requirements and the life cycle cost is equal to or less than the life cycle cost of a vehicle that would otherwise have been purchased. So very helpful clarity in doing that. I just wanted to speak a little bit about our existing fleet. So our existing fleet consists of 446 vehicles. You heard about some of those from Bill and Brent earlier, our 16 dump trucks. In addition to our dump trucks, also have our police vehicles, other larger duty kind of service trucks, and then more of a sedan type of vehicle. Ron Green, our fleet manager, Robert Stone, our fleet supervisor, and Christine Church, one of our accounting technicians, have done an excellent job in converting our fleet through our replacements of incorporating hybrid vehicles. A couple weeks ago, I shared we had 52 hybrid vehicles. I misspoke. We actually have 51. And as part of the 2022 replacement process, which is non-ARPA funding, there are 18 vehicles slated to be converted to hybrids. In terms of the budget adjustment, in the packet, there's a list of 42 vehicles proposed for replacement as part of this budget adjustment. 9 of those vehicles are hybrid. And we also have 3 vehicles that we are looking to do a pilot project in transitioning to 100% electric. And those vehicles are within the electric vehicles proposed or within the City Hall mini pool right now. So it provides an opportunity for us to work with our facilities department, our Department of Parks, on the charging station. So we're converting from a gasoline type charging station to an electricity. So we're talking about voltage and even more so amperage from electrical subpanels. So these vehicles will be here on the City Hall campus. So we have some discussions we've started with facilities in terms of what's needed, in terms of the amperage in those panels, as well as the charging stations. So we have more conversations to have, kind of who's going to do what between fleet and facilities. Take some things to figure out, but definitely confident that we're going to get there. So anyhow, I'm open for questions if you'd happen to have any. I tried to keep it short and sweet.
Seth Winder, Marley?
I do have a question. So the vehicles that are not identified to be transitioned to hybrid or electric, is the reasons behind that, is it just vehicle type or?
Yeah, yes, thank you very much. It is vehicle type. So looking back in the evolution of hybrid vehicles, primarily electrics have been more recent, but with the hybrid vehicles kind of started with more of the compact vehicles. The auto industry has progressed in terms of the availability of those. They're available now up to about a half-ton pickup. Some of our vehicles for our roadway work and stuff are actually more than that, so the industry doesn't have those available, and that's why those aren't proposed. Looking forward, a lot of movement in the United Kingdom in terms of adopting legislation, if you will, to kind of phase out the gas combustion type engines in a quicker time frame. Definitely see something similar happening in terms of the progression of both hybrid and electric vehicles in the States. In terms of the batteries, with the hybrid or electric, they are becoming a lot more cost effective. In terms of the delta, the difference between the base cost of a gas engine and a electric or hybrid type vehicle. So those costs are closing, and just see really the industry continuing to move that direction.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Core? From what I've been reading, there should be a pretty good number of more vehicles to choose from by the end of 2024, 2025. So moving in the right direction.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for the report. I was glad to hear the numbers that we have.
Yeah.
And glad that we are purchasing electric, so thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you. Jens, I'm not sure if you're, Auntie, can you bring up? Get out of the way and let you guys do it.
As we all know, we had quite a bit of rain these past few days, and so we're going to have Jens Vincent tell us about the event response.
Wow. What'd you do? Where'd you go?
Is there a mouse over here and bring it up? I think you need to bring it up from there. She'll watch your presentation for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, we had some rain recently. 28th, it was a bit wet. If I remember right, we had, earlier in the week, we had a briefing. And they said, you know, we're going to get some weather coming in, probably about Wednesday night at midnight, lasting through the commute in the morning. Well, they're about 12 hours behind. That started at noon on the 28th and ran through our commute in the afternoon. Wow. I love this picture. I mean, this really tells the story. Up in the top corner, you see that white mass up in there. There's Washington. We're buried underneath those clouds. We're buried under what's considered an atmospheric river. In layman's terms, that's just a lot of water that's going to get dumped on us really quick. Okay? Again, we had some briefs, some weather webinars telling us, what's the likeliness of this happening. You know, we've had weather webinars in the past where they've told us, yeah, there's a pretty good chance that we're going to get some weather. Everybody gets ramped up, and nothing. Nothing happens, you know, and this was not one of those events. They were only behind on the time a little bit. But you can see throughout that graphic there, the colors depicting the amount of rain, potential amounts of rain collecting throughout the event. Kent being in there, it looked like about 1.5 inches, give or take, is what they forecasted. However, looking throughout the day, this just again shows the regions, the areas where all the rainfall was occurring, the heavier rainfall. Fortunately, we didn't fall within the red or anything in there. We're still in the light green, still not expecting a lot. I mean, we're going to get rain just like we always do. One of Kent's 2 seasons. We have cold rain, we have warm rain, and we're in the cold rain season right now. So that much they're getting right. This is a great, Bill Thomas touched on, the little microclimates throughout the city of Kent, and I think this represents that pretty well. Even though they're all above 2 inches over a 24-hour period, you can see where some areas got hit harder than others. And like I said, you got, 1.6, you got 2.94, and these are all rain gauges that are scattered throughout the city that are monitored during these events. This is the one that really gets me because I was in traffic, and I think many people were in traffic right at the peak of that blue point there. That was the amount of rain coming down, the intensity of the rain coming down between 4, 5, 6 o'clock on the 28th. It took me an hour to get from here to Auburn. It was a long trip, I stayed off the freeways, I just figured freeways are gonna be a mess. I'm gonna hit the surface streets, not a good idea. But the freeways weren't any better. So we had a big dump over a few hour period. My storm team, they went back and forth. Are we gonna just put somebody on standby, or are we gonna hold somebody over? And they ended up making the right call, and ended up holding 3 two-man crews over for the first 8-hour shift. And then we had another crew come in at midnight and work. There's a few pictures that just show what can happen in a couple hours of really intense rain in this atmospheric river that came through 64th and 226th, leaves covering the catch basins. These guys are out there, they'll kind of walk up on the curb line and drag their lid hooks along the gutter line, waiting to feel a catch basin. And when they get there, they'll either sweep it off or just pull the lid off and wait for the water to drain through, put the lid back in place, and move on to the next spot. 109th and 256th, that's a great picture. Again, these aren't because our system was at capacity. This was just leaves and debris that had washed down during the event. Once they pull these lids, or once they get the debris picked up, our system did really well. And that, with the bottom right corner, 148th and 256th, it happens sometimes. Water can be damaging. Comes down, gets up underneath the panels. Sometimes the panels float. There's some alligatoring in there. It's just, they get broke up. And Bill was nice to point that out to me this morning. He said it was my flood that caused his asphalt to break up. I'll take it. I'll take it any day. But and I know they were out there making those repairs this week, or today maybe even. Looks like that's it. So it was an event. It was fun. I want to really stress to you guys, my teams love this. They really do. They work hard all summer, get ready for the rain to come in, and that's both our sewer pump station departments and our drainage team, drainage vegetation team. I had a number of people come up to me beforehand saying, hey, if you need us, just give us a call. And those are people in the water department and other areas. So I think overall, for the amount of rain that we got, it was a successful event. The DOC ran really well. I came in for about an hour, 10:30 on the 28th, and just hung out in the DOC with Chris Cuvion. It's one of the drainage supervisors. He was the DOC manager at the time, just to get a feel for how things were going. And they were running smooth. They're taking their calls. They're getting people sent out to those areas. And it was a good event. With that,
I just have to.
excuse me, dry throat. Do you have any questions?
I'll just add that it was that the crews are very much appreciated. As I was sitting warm and dry on my couch watching the news, I could see the crews
Fantastic.
in the background shots of some of the, especially the ones over in James.
Yes.
I appreciate the folks who send out those drive camp warnings telling you when the roads were closed, when the roads opened back up. So good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Communication is key when it comes to these events,
Yes.
for not just, the city staff, but definitely our traveling public. We want them to be safe. We want them to stay home, truthfully, in these events, and if we can get that out there, hey, it's bad outside, stay home. It's a good night.
Council members, comments?
No, just excellent job.
Thank you.
I unfortunately had to be out during those hours of the heavy rain, and the roads, your crews are doing a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll make sure to pass that on to them.
The lines, I was up on Pack Highway for part of that time. So as you're approaching the big intersection where 516 Kent Des Moines Road and Pack Highway, the line was just backed up. I was down by Highline College, and I could not see the end of the line.
Wow.
So it was quite a line there. A lot of people were out in that rain. So thank you very much. Is there anything else for the good of the order? In that case, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.